You won't believe the tea we're spilling today. From secret breakups to shocking lies, this is Unreal Tea. Hit subscribe before the drama starts. Welcome, everyone. After decades of silence, sacrifice and devotion, Meri Brown got her day in court, and the repercussions have the potential to bring down the whole Sister Wives dynasty. Fans have observed for years the emotional disintegration of her marriage, the icy remoteness, the snubbing comments from Kody Brown, and the agonizing manner in which Robyn's presence overshadowed her role in the family. But what television? Viewers didn't witness. What was going on behind the cameras was a betrayal so profound it invaded the family's bank accounts, their property deeds, and the very future Meri believed she was creating. What started as emotional abandonment evolved into something much darker, financial erasure. And now, in a stunning reversal no one anticipated, the courts have ruled. Tonight, we plunge into a bombshell tale of deceit, loyalty, and revenge. You're not hearing rumours. You're going to see it all. The evidence, the receipts, and the jaw-dropping. Verdict insiders claim has left Kody and Robyn grasping to keep everything they believed they owned. If you thought you've witnessed drama on Sister Wives in the past, you haven't seen anything yet. This is the untold legal showdown that makes every on-screen fight look like child's play. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and give this video a big thumbs up. Because once we lay bare the lies, the secret bank transfers, and the courtroom confession that shook Kody's world to its core, you will realise why this case will go down in history as the biggest reality TV scandal. It all begins in Flagstaff, Arizona, on a dusty tract of land known as Coyote Pass, a site that was meant to represent oneness, but ended up being the tool that severed Meri Brown from her own family's destiny. Coyote Pass was more than land. To the Browns, it was meant to be the promised land, the crowning jewel of their polygamist utopia. 4 houses for 4 wives, and Kody's house in the middle, the patriarchal centre that represented his domination. On television, it was presented as a family dream, a shared aspiration. Behind the closed doors, however, the dream was already tainted. And the venom spread when Meri's name was intentionally left out of the deeds. It seemed like a clerical error at first. Kody and Robyn spun it tactically. Financing was tricky, papers were held up, no cause for alarm. But from insider testimony and previously undisclosed documents, this wasn't an error, it was a strategy. A strategy that had been gathering momentum for close to a decade. To appreciate the severity of Meri's infidelity, you need to wind the clock back. Meri wasn't merely one wife among several. She was the first, the legal wife, the one whose credit and signature enabled the early mortgages. She was the financial support of the Brown family for 20 years. All of her paychecks went into what they referred to as the family pot, a community bank account held by Kody. It was founded on trust, on faith, and on Meri's hope that her fidelity would be reciprocated. But in 2014, that foundation crumbled. Kody divorced Meri, not because he wanted to end their marriage, at least that's not how he sold it, but because he needed to legally marry Robyn in order to adopt her children. To the world, Meri appeared, selfless, noble even, giving up her status to protect the kids. But court sources now indicate divorce was Exhibit A in a scheme of court manoeuvres intended to chase Meri out and promote Robyn for good. When the Browns relocated and moved to Flagstaff, family finances were already shaky. Several rentals, deteriorating mortgages, and the $820,000 Coyote Pass by all added up to every dollar mattering. And here's where the narrative goes from bad to worse. As financial records gathered by Meri's attorneys show, she wasn't just pitching in, she was holding the family up. Her LuLaRoe company was thriving then, bringing in 6-figure amounts every year. Insiders report that when the family's coffers were depleted, Kody relied on Meri herself, coercing her into pouring her business earnings into the fund. And she did. Not twice, not once, but repeatedly. One of the transfers, however, rocked. The courtroom. More than $100,000 transferred from Meri's personal account to the family fund just days before Coyote Pass was closing. On paper, it was as much a down payment as any, and yet whose name does one see on the deed? Not Meri's. Not temporarily either. only Kody's and Robyn's. The betrayal didn't end with the land, Mary's fantasy endeavour, Lizzie's Heritage Inn, her Utah bed and breakfast was another sticking point. Kody and Robyn initially brushed it off, laughed at it, even dissuaded her from purchasing it. But when it began making money, the pressure reappeared. Invest the funds back into the family. Meri, still holding on to the principle of cohesion, acquiesced. And once again, her hard-earned dollars were redirected to pay debts on land she legally had no claim to. For years, she ignored the warning signs, brushing off her doubts because she believed Kody's words. This is just a temporary arrangement. Your place is secure. You'll always have a piece of the dream. But the truth became undeniable during a now infamous scene on Sister Wives. On tape, Kody boasted about the property he owns with Janelle and the property he owns with Robyn. But when Meri came along, silence. She wasn't mentioned in his story. The knife cut deeper when he and Robyn turned the tale that Meri was reluctant, that she was the cause of her name not being on the deed. A bald-faced lie that blamed the woman they were erasing. That public embarrassment was the tipping point. Off-camera, Meri assembled her financial planners, her lawyers, and started digging. What she found was shocking. A cache of receipts, wire transfers and bank statements that revealed a decades-long pattern of exploitation. To her lawyers, it wasn't neglect, it was fraud. And with that, Meri Brown, the shy, faithful first wife, who had given up everything, subscribed to a lawsuit that would shake the Brown clan to its foundation. When Meri's lawsuit reached the court system, it did not arrive with TV cameras or sensationalized hype. It was subdued, sealed, calculated. But don't get it twisted, its effect was cataclysmic. The allegations were abhorrent. Breach of fiduciary, duty, unjust enrichment, and fraudulent misrepresentation. In simple terms, Meri accused Kody and Robyn of accepting her money in the name of family contributions, and then excluding her from the very properties those proceeds had paid for. The discovery phase came first. All documents, all emails, all financial records had to be handed over. And it was during this phase that Kody and Robyn's painstakingly constructed defences began to disintegrate. The vision of a spiritual family, bound by faith, gave way to a trail of paper documenting cold, hard cash. Meri's lawyers came with what one insider called a financial autopsy report. They had pieced together 30 years of money movement, from Meri's earliest paychecks in Sapasi-Tuamswais, Utah, to her LuLaRoe kingdom, to the inn she loved. They charted every deposit into the family account, every wire transfer out, and most culpably, every property payment that directly culminated in Coyote Pass. Kody's attorneys attempted to persuade the court that the family existed beyond standard, legal norms, that all that Meri brought was a gift freely offered under their spiritual agreement. But Meri's attorneys pierced the veil with surgical acuteness. "This isn't a church," one lawyer allegedly said to the judge. "This is a court of law, and in this courtroom, money is money, contracts are contracts, and betrayal has consequences." And then the depositions, the sealed-away testimonials that oftentimes determine cases before they ever reach trial. Kody Brown, normally so self-assured on camera, was a wreck under oath. As reported by sources within the room, he strutted in with his typical swagger. But once Meri's lead attorney commenced questioning, his story fell apart. She began innocently enough. "Mr. Brown, who handled the finances for the family?" "I did," Kody replied matter-of-factly. "And did Meri Brown provide income to the family?" "Of course, that was her responsibility." "And these contributions," the lawyer went on unbroken, "were they voluntary gifts, or were they considered to be investments in family assets?" Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "They were for the family. Everything was for the family." The lawyer then produced the receipts, literal bank statements displayed on the wall. "Mr. Brown, can you account for this $100,000 transfer from Meri Brown's account on June 12, 2018, and why 3 days later, almost the same amount was paid to the mortgage company servicing the parcel, deeded only to you and your wife, Robyn?" The room fell silent. Kody stuttered. He grumbled about fungible funds, not being able to keep the dollar straight to the dollar. But the damage was done. The link between Meri's money and Kody and Robyn's property was now undeniable. The FI attorney pressed harder. So, to be clear, Mr. Brown, Meri Brown paid the down payment on land she does not legally own. Is that correct? For once, Kody had no smooth answer. His temper flared, and according to insiders, he lashed out, accusing the lawyer of not understanding polygamy and attacking his family. But the lawyer, cool as ice, just went back to the documents. Figures don't lie. And under oath, neither did Kody. When the deposition was over, Kody had conceded 3 things of vital importance. He was in charge of the cash. Meri had put in huge sums. He made the decision on his own to leave her off the deeds. It was, in fact, a confession. Meanwhile, Robyn, the normally reserved tactician, was losing her grip behind the scenes. Insiders reported that she pleaded to be allowed to join the defense, believing her emotional appeals would persuade the judge. Legal experts cautioned her, however, tears don't get in the way of bank statements. Still, Robyn persisted. And when she eventually entered the legal glare, it would be a terminal error. The scene was set, the proof was in, the depositions were done, and the Brown family, long held up as a spiritual empire of togetherness, was on the verge of exposure to the harsh judgment of law. The hearing day arrived, and while cameras weren't permitted inside, rumours from the courtroom have painted a picture more startling than any scene seen on Sister Wives. Forget couch interviews, forget family counselling sessions. This was raw, unfiltered truth, no edits, no retakes. Meri came in quietly, dressed with understated confidence, with her legal team flanking her. For decades, viewers had watched her shrink, fold in, and take scraps of affection. But in that courtroom she was different. She wasn't the forgotten wife anymore, she was the plaintiff seeking justice. On the other side of the aisle were Kody and Robyn, their defence tenuous, their cool unraveling. Kody, the usual suave raconteur, seemed fidgety, bordering on defiance. Robyn, the traditional on-screen depiction of the tearful and aggrieved victim, was ashen, her eyes shifting nervously. It was the culmination of decades of planning, manipulation and domination, and now balance was to be had. Meri's lawyers went first, and insiders explained that it was nothing less than devastating. A timeline of evidence cast across the courtroom, they presented a story too tight to deny. 30 years' worth of service, thousands of transactions. Every dollar followed, every vow recorded. They demonstrated how Meri's funds paid for the very foundation of the Brown Empire, and how those same funds were used to secure Kody and Robyn's future at the expense of hers. And then the pièce de résistance, a side-by-side comparison. On one side, a bank transfer from Meri's LuLaRoe account. On the other, a deed filed days later placing Kody and Robyn as joint tenants with full survivorship rights. The message was blunt. Meri's money purchased land she was intentionally kept out of. Tension pulsed in the courtroom as Meri's attorney delivered the coup de grâce. This wasn't a family pot. This was a funnel, and at the bottom of that funnel, only 2 names were written, Kody Brown and Robyn Brown. Kody's defence attempted to counter. They insisted, predictably, that polygamous families refuse to obey normal rules, that Meri's work was spiritual sacrifices, not legal investments. Kody even testified, hoping to restore his control by impassioned speeches regarding loyalty, faith and solidarity. But the more he testified, the more tenuous his defence grew. His contradictions mounted, his anger snapped, and at one point, it is reported by observers, the judge intervened brusquely with a sharp reminder. This court deals in facts, not faith. And then it was Robyn's turn. Against the advice of her lawyers, she forced herself to speak. She wept, alleging that she and Kody had ever behaved with love and justice, that Meri was distorting history out of jealousy. But cross-examined, her story fell apart. Court filings disclosed her own hands-on part in major money matters, her name signed beside Kody's on deeds and accounts, whereas Meri's was noticeably absent. Each tearful denial was countered with another receipt, another signature, another incriminating piece of evidence. And then silence. The evidence had been presented, the arguments made. All that was left was the verdict. The judge's words were reported as calm, measured, and definitive. Years of drama, manipulation, and deceit reduced to a ruling that would change the Brown family's lives forever. It was a landslide, according to insider leaks, the ruling going in favour of Meri. The court concluded that Kody and Robyn had been unjustly enriched at her cost, that there were broken promises, and that Meri's financial interest in Coyote Pass could not be denied. The solution? A whopping multi-million-dollar judgment in Meri's name. Reports suggest the judge ordered not only financial compensation, but also a reassessment of property ownership rights, effectively rewriting the future Kody and Robyn thought they had secured. For the first time in decades, Meri wasn't just surviving, she was vindicated. The gavel fell, and with it, the Brown family's carefully built facade shattered. For Meri, it was vindication wrapped in shock. Years of devotion had been waved away by Kody with a dismissive gesture, obliterated, with signatures on land deeds that left her out, hidden beneath years of gaslighting. But the law had just done something Kody never would. It recognised her value, her work, and her place in the Coyote Pass narrative. Sources say Meri remained motionless as the verdict was delivered, serene-faced, but with tears in her eyes. She did not explode in triumph. She did not gloat. For a woman who had spent years living under the public eye, this was a very personal moment. It wasn't about beating Kody. It was about reclaiming herself from him at last. Kody, on the other hand, could not keep his rage in check. Eyewitnesses see him pacing, muttering in anger to his lawyers, shaking his head in incredulity. He had always gotten away with controlling the story, always twisted reality to his version of events. But in that courtroom, away from cameras and editing rooms, the story escaped him. Facts took the place of feelings, receipts took the place of rhetoric, and for possibly the first time in his entire life, Kody Brown was at the mercy of events. Robyn's response was no less indicative. The female stereotype most times used as the peacemaker, the one who just wanted everyone to be happy, was said to have been overcome with tears, crying into her hands when the judge read out the order for compensation. The gilded picture of the sheltered, pure wife was replaced in the court of law by the face of one whose financial stronghold had just been destroyed. The property that Meri and Kody had staked as their own inheritance was now a war zone pockmarked with betrayal. But the decision wasn't just a victory for Meri, it was a bomb that exploded at the centre of the sister wives' dynasty. The aftershocks were instantaneous. People questioned online. How would Kody cover the judgment? Would property be confiscated? Would this be the death knell for sister wives as a franchise if the financial foundation of the family fell apart? Fans who had long been suspicious of favouritism finally had legal proof that the playing field was never level. And maybe the question that haunts most of all, what now for Coyote Pass? News reports indicate the ruling could compel the sale of chunks of the land or a redistribution of the ownership to honour Meri's rightful claim. That would mean the ambitious dream of 4 houses, Kody in the middle and Robyn on his arm, may never be realised. Instead, Coyote Pass is now a monument to betrayal, a reminder etched in the Arizona ground of what occurs when loyalty is taken for granted. For Meri, however, this was never about land or dollars. It was about self-respect, about getting back up after all those years of being ignored, dismissed, and obliterated. She had been the first wife, the creator of the foundation, and while Kody had attempted to erase her from the future, the courts had erased the erasure. And for Sister Wives fans, this verdict proved what they knew all along. Beneath the smiles, the confessions, and the scripted family harmony was a war. A war Meri ultimately emerged victorious from. But don't think for a second that this is where the story ends. Kody and Robyn, sources say, are already planning their next move. Appeals, asset restructuring, even rumours of bankruptcy protection have swirled around those close to them. They might have lost this battle, but their war to dictate terms isn't finished. The question is, will the world believe them anymore? The courthouse emptied out, but the reverberations of the verdict trailed the Browns like a shadow they could not remove. Outside, reporters loitered, cameras at the ready, fans scrolling social media with feverish expectations. And as Meri slipped unobtrusively into a waiting car, Kody and Robyn were thrust into the limelight they could no longer command. Kody, face flushed and storming past the microphones, spat fragments of defiance. "This isn't over. Family shouldn't betray family. The system doesn't understand us." His words, now gospel to faithful viewers, sounded hollow behind legal defeat. No amount of screaming could wipe away the paper trail that connected him with betrayal. Robyn brought up the rear, tears-swollen eyes, holding onto Kody's arm as if closeness could protect her from the wave of retribution. For years she had built a persona of being misunderstood, maligned, unfairly accused. But with deeds bearing her name and bank documents bearing her signature, the persona shattered beyond recognition. Meri, on the other hand, did not celebrate openly. She did not gloat on social media or issue incendiary statements. Instead, she did something stronger. She kept the silence. Because now the world knew the truth. She did not have to prove herself. The courts had proved her. And in that silence, fans discovered a new sort of power in Meri. Resilience without rancour, strength without display. But this triumph, as euphoric as it was, begged questions no one could yet provide. Could Kody himself pay the judgment without selling assets? Would TLC keep subsidising a family whose personal transgressions were now an open secret? Would Janelle or Christine emerge from the shadows with their own claims, spurred on by Meri's victory? And then the rumours began. Quiet, subdued, but growing louder. This case could be more than simply about money. Legal professionals started speculating about fraud, about tax consequences, about whether Kody and Robyn's financial transactions had crossed more borders than even Meri knew. If prosecutors began snooping around, the courtroom drama enthusiasts had just seen was only the tip of the iceberg. Back in the fan community, feelings were running hot. Social media erupted with hashtags, "Justice for Meri," Kody exposed, Robyn revealed. Fans analysed each previous episode, replaying old scenes with fresh eyes, stitching together the pattern that had always been in plain view. What previously appeared to be family conflict now appeared to be financial warfare. And Meri? Sources claim she's already planning her next step, one not constructed on Kody's shadow but constructed on her own light. With money in his pocket, with her honour intact, she can now write a future that is hers alone. But if the fans were thinking that peace would reign, they might be sadly mistaken. Because Kody Brown is not a man who takes defeat lying down. Private, he's said to be engineering revenge. He's determined to restore his image, his empire, and his story. Robyn, by his side, is determined to save what's left of their legacy. They're both preparing to wage a war of appeals, counterclaims, and media manipulation. The truth is, this wasn't the end. It was the turning point. The verdict didn't shut the book on sister wives. It ripped the cover off, revealing pages of betrayal, greed, and heartbreak that the fans had only seen hints of before. So now there hangs the question, dark and unanswered. Will Meri's victory be the start of her freedom or the beginning of a still darker struggle? At least this is sure. The world will be watching. In the weeks after the verdict, there was silence that fell over the Browns like a choking blanket. On camera, there were no new confessional interviews, no happy porch parties, no shots of Kody walking around Coyote Pass with big hand gestures and larger-than-life dreams. What was once TLC's gem suddenly seemed toxic. Behind the scenes, though, was turmoil. Stacks of legal papers rose up, creditors closed in, attorneys fought vehement phone calls at midnight. What was initially Meri's lawsuit was poised to reveal a whole lot more than anyone in the family wished the world to know. Kody, bereft of his courtroom bluster, descended into paranoia. Behind-the-scenes sources say he started writing prolix, nighttime missives to TLC producers, demanding the show frame the lawsuit as a misunderstanding, exaggerated beyond recognition. He wanted to characterize Meri as vengeful, bitter, deranged. But producers, fearful of being sued, wouldn't go anywhere near the story. Their cameras had captured years of favouritism, clandestine meetings and money talks. To tamper with that footage now would be an accusation of interference. Robyn, however, locked herself away. Friends who know her describe how she wept uninterrupted, faulting herself for pushing so hard for her name being included on the deeds, faulting the court for failing to see their sacred covenant, faulting Meri for betraying the family. But underpinning those tears was fear, genuine, deep-seated fear. Because if Kody's empire fell, then so would the shield she had constructed for her children. And then there was the domino effect. Janelle, quiet, for so long but observing, reportedly consulted counsel of her own. Christine, who was already divorced from Kody, made discreet calls to Meri's lawyer. Both had suggested financial angst, sacrifices unremarked upon for years. Now, with Meri's win, they saw potential. What if they also had grievances? What if decades of their own toil could be measured, traced and reclaimed? For Kody, the horror wasn't economic, it was existential. His Coyote Pass vision had always been greater than dirt. It was his monument to himself, to his power to keep 4 wives in orbit around his star. But with Meri's verdict cutting into that fantasy and rumours of additional lawsuits in the works, the monument was disintegrating into dust. And the fans, they were not letting go. Each post, each clip, each rerun was proof in the court of public opinion. Fans analysed Robyn's tearful admissions, Kody's angry rants, Meri's introspective moments of pain. Each moment, once dismissed as reality TV theatrics, now appeared to be foreshadowing, like breadcrumbs of a betrayal years in the making. The Browns had made their fortune on exposure, but now exposure was their nemesis. Every secret could be subpoenaed, every family decision could be picked apart, every dollar could be traced back. And somewhere, in the silence of her house, Meri started to breathe freely for the first time in years. Not because the war was finished, but because, for a change, she wasn't the one left behind. But the tale does not end there, because with every triumph comes reprisal. And Kody Brown, hurt, backed into a corner, embarrassed, was already setting his. This family's drama is far from over, so smash like if yours are Team Wives, subscribe for the next explosive update, and drop a comment below. Who do you think will win? Stay shady, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next scandal. Behind TLC, Sister Wives out.